see what's out there.
Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There Plus, a weekly video stream and podcast currently focused on Star Wars The Mandalorian Season 3, which is available to watch on Disney+. My name's Keith Isles, and as ever for this stream, I am joined by
Graham Williams,
Beard for Hire, and we are both film and TV enthusiasts. And in today's double episode, we're going to have a spoiler-filled conversation around chapters 22 and 23. That is Gun for Hire and The Spies. So be warned, spoilers ahead. So, Graham, yes, we did miss a week, hence why we're doing the double episode. And what a week to have to miss, because there was Star Wars Celebration last weekend and loads of announcements about future projects and castings and all sorts of things. But basically, I had to miss last week because my dad has been very ill in hospital. But I'm really pleased to say he had a procedure today and he is on the right side of it now and on the road to recovery. So I'll raise my Mando mug to my dad. And that's as personal as I'm going to get.
Well, good news there, Keith.
It is. What it did mean is both this and the other show that we run here, the Picard Season 3, which I do with Pete Mealy. Both of those this week, you're going to get double episodes because just the way it is. And it turns out that actually both of the shows are finishing at the same time. You know, we're going to be covering the penultimate episodes and obviously finales this time next week, all going well. And I'm going to really try hard to see if we can get the episodes out much quicker next week before all the spoilers and reviews and all of that sort of thing gets out in the ether. I suppose it's important that I should say at this point, if you are new to this and you're like, they're going on about stuff, welcome. We really do appreciate you tuning in. If you find this interesting, please do consider giving us a thumbs up, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification when we do skip weeks or whatever. It won't matter because you'll get notified as and when new content drops. On this channel, we cover all things film and television related. So if that's your kind of jam, then please do stick around. If you're listening to us on a podcast, please do consider giving us a review on the podcatcher of your choice. So got all of that out of the way. So Graham, before we get into these two episodes and obviously give our thoughts and whatever further down the track, but have you been sort of abreast of the Star Wars news? Slip of the tongue.
Well, I try and keep a hold of both galaxies, Trek and Wars, bits and bobs with. The trailer's also coming out as well, especially for Ahsoka, which really wet my whistle this week gone, and some other bits and bobs around, castings as well. So some excitement coming out, but as you know, we live in kind of a golden age at the moment, don't we? Where there's so much content being introduced, not just the Wars and the Trek as well, that we're getting all sorts of Marvel, DC, or non-geek out sequels and follow-ups. We were just talking the other day about Mission Impossible this year.
Yes.
There's so much going on. I'm thinking, should I really go to work tomorrow? Should I really do that? There's so much to watch right now and get excited about, or not, as the case may be. But regardless, if it's not so good, we still watch it, don't we? We still geek out over it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what makes for discussion. And, without sort of jumping too far ahead of ourselves, some of our predictions that we've had over previous weeks have been correct, but maybe not in the correct series. But They have been correct, right? So,
I'm going to do my best tonight because I've literally just come off watching Mando episode 23 again and Picard season 3, the penultimate episode,
yeah,
and more as well. So my brain is all a bit of a mix-up. So if I jump into talking about Iron Man fighting Picard in a with a Mandalorian, you're just gonna have to forgive me, right?
Yeah. Well, I must admit, one of the things I did think, with having to sort of skip the week and do both together, it is going to be a different conversation than we would have had we done each week separately, and we'll come on to that. I've got some thoughts and feelings which have kind of changed over the week. So, but let's just get into it. So, Graham, Beard for Hire, you may fire when ready.
Okay, firstly, on to chapter 22. Is CSI Far, Far Away. It's Farewell, My Mando. No, it's The Long Time Ago Goodbye. No, not really. It's Guns for Hire. So as with chapter 19, The Convert, the main storyline of The Mandalorian this week is only at the bookends of the chapter. So we firstly see Axe Woves in action with Cosca Reeves at his side, being all badass Mandalorian guns for hire, splitting up a Mon Calamari Princeton and a female Quarren captain. Then Bo-Katan, Din Djarin and Grogu head to the planet Plazir 15 to meet with Bo-Katan's Mandalorian fleet, but they can't yet. They need permission to talk with the Mandalorian guns from hire from none other than Lizzo and Jack Black, both being regents of this luxury planet, and they have a droid problem. Striking up a deal with the pair to recognize Bo-Katan's claim to Mandalore, plus give permission to speak to a fleet for helping, it's a no-brainer. And so, Bo-Katan Spade and Din Marlowe go on the hunt for rogue, malfunctioning droids. They literally chase down leads, piece together loose threads, speak to Ugnaughts, visit a droid bar where Din is starkly shown his misguided prejudices, and go all Star Wars forensic in a Star Wars morgue to eventually find the prime suspect of the droid malfunctions. That is head of Plazir 15 Security Commissioner Hellgate, played by the ever-wonderful Christopher Lloyd. But Commissioner Hellgate is a separatist, no less, and a fanboy of Count Dooku. But with the mystery solved, Bo-Katan is given the key to Plazir 15. No, not a glass one, but more importantly, is given permission to meet with the former Mandalorian fleet. There she literally battles Axe Woves and defeats him, but the Mandalorian guns for hire still won't join her, until Din provides the logic of how, in the minds of Mandalorian Chapter 18, Bo-Katan could use the Darksaber. If you remember that far back. Din was defeated then by the Lost in Space robot come John Carpenter's The Thing creature, and Bo-Katan defeated it. Ta-da! Cue end credits. On to chapter 23, The Spies. And we're back on track. Firstly with Moff Gideon, who is alive and well. He and the old Imperial Secret 7 Shadow Council snipe and snare at each other in the good old Empire way until Gideon gets his own way. He's so happy, he even does a twirl. On Nevarro, the newly formed Mandalorian fleet arrives. Not wasting any time, Bo-Katan spells out her plan to retake Mandalore. She gets a group of volunteers from both tribes, including Din, Axe Wove, Cosca Reeves, Paz Vizsla, and the Armourer. They are in. But before they leave, Grogu gets a new IG-12, not 11, shell to play with from Greef Karga, which he loves. With typical Grogu comedy gold, the simple words yes and no show the rebellion of Din Djarin's rules. It's I, Grogu, 12 time. At Mandalore, the Uneasy Alliance is tested further when a mystery landship appears with more Mandalorian survivors of the Last Purge. We also hear of Bo-Katan's sacrifice to Moff Gideon's and his involvement in the deception of the Night of 1,000 Tears. Bo-Katan was tricked. The pain and guilt remains with her. The landship takes the Mandalorian group to the Great Furnace. At their destination, they're attacked by uber-evil clone stormtrooper Mandalorians. It's an ambush. And who's behind it? None other than the Moff of the Hour, Gideon. Just like a warped dark side A-team Moff Hannibal, Gideon reveals all. He has the best of all worlds, clones, Empire technology, and Mandalorian Beskar. He loves it when a despicable plan comes together. Trapped and facing death, the Mandalorian group is nearly killed. Din Djarin first is captured, then Paz Vizsla goes on a rampage to sacrifice himself so the other Mandalorians can escape. Bo-Katan uses the Darksaber to cut a hole in the blast doors, and away they and I, Grogu 12, escape. Cue end credits.
Very good. Very good. CSI Far, Far Away. I wonder where you got that one from, Graham.
Yes, that wasn't one of mine. Yes, could do a shout out to Keith Isles on that one. Blatantly stole that one.
No, there was a lot to cram in there, wasn't there? So yeah, very.
I was getting my characters mixed up at one point, so I hope that came across all right.
It came across.
There was Bo Din Katan, Goff Midian, and nearly lost it there.
We all get our mucking words fuddled up sometimes, so yeah, it's absolutely fine. What was I going to say? I did also, while you were reading that, I put the sort of loose agenda that we use for this show up for anyone that isn't a regular guest or a regular viewer, should I say? So yeah, but well, for now then, it is time to thank the maker. All righty. So looking at the credits, we've talked about many of these people in previous episodes, but just to say that, Chapter 22 was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who is returning. This is actually her third outing as director on The Mandalorian. She has done an episode in all 3 seasons. So very, very familiar with these characters and with this world, and certainly, following in her dad's footsteps, if you like, with moving from being an actress into a director. So yeah, really, really good stuff there. Good to see her back for Chapter 22, Guns for Hire, and then returning again for Chapter 23 is Rick Famuyiwa, who has, again, directed some previous episodes. We've talked quite a bit about his work as well, so I don't want to make these too repetitive. And also, and we've got a lot to cover this week. Also, it's important to point out that Chapter 22 was written by showrunner Jon Favreau, and Chapter 23... showrunner Jon Favreau was joined by producer Dave Filoni to write that, and kind of makes a lot of sense because obviously Dave Filoni being behind a lot of the Mandalorian lore and history from his time on Clone Wars and Rebels. So yeah, good stuff there. I think that's good for shout outs this week.
And where the 2 episodes are completely different, there's no argument over the directing at all or production values. Again, still 2 exciting where they needed to be episodes, tense episodes where they needed to be 2.
Yeah, so, yeah. I mean,
different styles, but still fitted very well, I thought.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they tend to be pulling from a team of directors that they've been using across the various seasons, and we're always saying, despite any nitpicks that we might actually have with storytelling or characters or the way the show is going, we really do always point out that in terms of the craft and the production itself, it's quite hard to fault a lot of this stuff in terms of the actual filmmaking, visual effects, costumes, all of music, all of the other many things that go into filmmaking. And we obviously look at this from a filmmaker's point of view and have appreciation for that stuff. Even though we get frustrated about stuff as well, but we'll come on to that. But first, I think it's time for a little drink as we look at the Easter eggs that would have been more appropriate last week, actually, but there you go. Time for some Bantha Milk Blue.
Yeah, I'm back to my orange this week again. Yeah, but the joke about the wrong side of the Bantha has been done, so we won't repeat that.
It has. Yeah, we've done that one quite a bit, haven't we? So, Easter eggs.
Right, yeah. Do it by episode now.
I suppose we should, yes. All right, well, start off then with Chapter 22, Guns for Hire. Anything that sort of, really stuck out for you in that one?
Yeah, yes. And also, I'm going to cheat a bit as well, because even though there's Easter eggs, there's been both episodes cameos as well, surprising ones. And I want to shout out them once we do the Easter eggs, if that's okay. So, chapter 22, the the detective one. But firstly, it was an episode full of droids. I personally couldn't keep up with all the droids, but the one that stood out and hit us first was literally the welcoming party, as it were, with Bo-Katan, Din Djarin, and Grogu getting to the planet. And they were, as I said, the droids in black. They were C-3PO and R2-D2 alikes, but they were sleek black. And I was like, that is absolutely deliberate.
Yes.
It was just those two. R2 unit and a C3 unit as well, right there. So, and then all the other droids that we were just inundated with throughout. But even in the bar, I was picking up on so many from the movies, but I just don't know their designations. So don't go into that kind of detail there, Keith.
Right. Yeah. I mean, okay. I pulled up a few things. Again, I can't take credit for some of these memes or jokes that I found when I was searching for pictures online. But obviously, the CSI Star Wars. When I saw that, I thought, yes, I've got to take that picture for sure, because it really was like a police procedural. In the middle there, right down to and I was trying to find a picture of it and I couldn't, but right down to the holographic "do not cross," tape around the crime scene. Obviously in Arabish, not in English, but it did kind of make me laugh because it was an absolute blatant, homage, send up, whatever you want to call it, to that, which
and Blade Runner as well. There's so much Blade Runner-esque neon with a very dark backdrop as well. There were vibes aplenty here.
Yes, no, definitely. And I thought the chase sequence through that, crowded town or whatever was actually quite well done. So, props to Bryce Dallas Howard for the direction and stuff. She and her team there, I thought that was actually quite nicely handled. Obviously, we get one sort of missed opportunity. Actually, is the middle picture there is a scene from the animated series. I think it's from the Clone Wars of Bo-Katan when she gets the Darksaber and she raises it above her head. And I kind of thought they were going to go there, and they didn't. She ignites the Darksaber and stands there. But I thought we were going to get kind of a homage back to the animated series with that. But so I was quite surprised by that. We obviously saw, and again, I couldn't find a picture of the white one, but we saw an interrogation droid like the torture droid from New Hope, but instead of black like the one in New Hope, it was actually white. You know, when they were doing their droid autopsy scene, which I thought was quite amusing. Also, I did see this online. Christopher Lloyd in The Mandalorian and Christopher Lloyd, Man in the DeLorean.
Oh, that made me laugh when I saw that. That was shared with everyone I know.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. But you know, always good to see Christopher Lloyd. And talking of Christopher Lloyd, obviously we got a bit of a Star Trek connection here, because Christopher Lloyd, of course, played Commander Krug in Star Trek 3, the Klingon captain in that. And it's come out very dark. I was trying very hard to find a picture of the Mon Calamari bridge there that we had, and I couldn't really find a clear picture of it. But you know, where he was in a tank to start with, and then the tank sort of drains. But I don't know. It's funny. There's something in Star Trek in the episode the same week that was very Star Wars, and I thought in this Star Wars that bridge looked very Star Trek. I don't know whether you felt that way, but when I saw it, I thought that looks like a Star Trek bridge rather than a Star Wars bridge. But you know, that's nitpicking. But yeah, what other Easter eggs? I mean, we talked about the cameos. Obviously, you already pointed out Jack Black and Lizzo were in that. Obviously, Christopher Lloyd. One cameo that a sort of cameo, voice cameo that might have gone past some people was the Mon. Is it the Mon Calamari or the other?
Mon Calamari, the young princeling.
Yes. Yeah. Did you know about that one?
No, I had to cheat and look online. I was wondering who they were, and I saw that it was actually Harry Holland. So
yes, who is actually brother. Exactly Tom Holland's brother, and it you know, it did kind of sound like Tom Holland, didn't it? So it was kind of, oh right, okay, interesting. But
yeah, I was curious to see who they were, because the accents were terribly British.
They were. Yeah, I was, I don't know, maybe I just expect when I see them for them to sound more like Admiral Akbar from Return of the Jedi. I always get a bit, or the character from Rogue One. But the yeah, I thought they sounded very very
Which
human.
is not a bad thing. For those non-British bods, it doesn't matter. It's all pretty much the same accent, isn't it? For us, it stood out. No, I was checking out to see who was who. Also checking out the bartender droid as well. Couldn't make out his it's just his voice, and I found out that it was actually Seth Gable, who's Bryce Dallas Howard's husband. So,
right, I did not know that. Okay,
which is a nice touch. May not see each other when there's filming, so why not have hubby, even if he was acting or not, to be involved there? You know, some time there. So that's something I checked out. It was just because there was a lot in this. You didn't see people's faces. There was a lot of Star Wars creatures in the palace. There was also all the droids as well, and yeah, so I was wondering who the voice talents were in this episode.
Very good, very good.
Yeah. So that was interesting.
And there was a lot. What else? There was a lot of you know, Through the Looking Glass or Alice in Wonderland vibe to it as well. I felt, you know, with the sort of, it was almost like the Mad Tea Party, you know, when they come in and
yes,
and they've got those characters around the table and the croquet type of game and whatever, you know.
Yeah, good point. Actually, I hadn't thought of that. It was very much Alice in Wonderland there. Yeah, that's I'll go back to that actually.
Okay, and what about Easter eggs for chapter 23, The Spies. Are there any that sort of stood out for you on that?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I lost you for a few seconds there. So yeah, let's hit this one then. So for someone who's just started reading the I can't even remember it now. It was Heir to the Empire, the novel by Timothy Zahn. So we've got Captain Pelion and the mention of Grand Admiral Thrawn as well. So that was a pickup there for me, and I haven't done Rebels yet, TV series. So that was good to see, but massive surprise. I didn't see him this first time. It was only the second time when I went back. It's Xander Berkeley who's playing Pelion.
That's correct. Yeah, Xander Berkeley from lots of movies and shows.
Loads and loads.
George Mason in 24. He'll always go down as from my my recollection and whatever. But yes, good to see him in there. Also, Captain Pelion was appeared in Rebels as well, the animated series. So yeah, it's quite good that they brought that character in, and obviously from the announcements at Star Wars Celebration, which I won't go into because it's old news now, but it does look very much like Filoni's plan with the movies set in the Mandoverse, as they're calling it, with Ahsoka and whatever. It does seem like they are going to take a lot of inspiration from Timothy Zahn's trilogy. They even, in the trailer, she even says the heir to the Empire, doesn't she? In the trailer, which
absolutely, yeah.
Rosario Dawson, as Ahsoka, says that, and it's great that they're using or borrowing from parts of that. Obviously, the more you read it, Graham, the more you'll realize that to do a proper adaptation of that is going to be tricky, because it does involve the legacy characters quite a fair bit. So, but they're going to try
all the scenes for them.
Yeah, but they're going to try and sort of squeeze that in somewhere. So, any others? Any others that stood out?
When it came, so I'm going to do, before I go on to the cameos, and one or couple that fit, one cameo fitted really well with something else. There was the Imperial Guard clone Mandalorians at the end. So the ones we'd seen in Return of the Jedi, the big cloaked red guards who had been Mandoified by Moff Gideon. Because I used to have a figurine of one of them, and I could never work out what he was other than the guards, but it made him fight when I was a kid.
Yeah,
made him fight other characters. So actually, it's the first time for me I'm seeing them actually in fighting mode, as I had been doing, but obviously with a slight twist there. So
yeah. I mean the figure, was the Emperor's Royal Guard figure.
That's it. Yeah.
Which, as I said, they were seen in Return of the Jedi, but the Praetorian Guards, which is the name for this version, were actually from The Last Jedi. They're the ones
okay.
like Kylo.
I don't remember that then, eh?
Yeah, they're the ones that fight Rey and Kylo Ren in that scene. So yeah, so it's obviously connecting those things together as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah.
The cameo that I saw was Charles Baker, who's played Skinny Pete in Breaking Bad.
That's right. Yes, he's in the sort of,
and because. Yeah, and with Giancarlo Esposito playing Gus Fring there too in Breaking Bad, I thought it was a really nice link. So massive fan of Breaking Bad, and seeing Skinny Pete in being a bit more serious and less of a loser It was excellent there, but not many others in this episode, in this chapter, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean the other, I mean on that sort of Waterworld-esque, ship that they end up on in that one. There is I'm trying to, it's all right, I'm looking up because I'm trying to think of the actor's name and it's totally escaped me. He was in Maverick. Charles Parnell. Sorry, Charles Parnell was there from Maverick. Oh, I think I've lost you, Graham. Yeah, I think Graham's just dropped out. Yes, he has dropped out of the stream. So if you're watching, bear with us while we reconnect. And if you listen, I'll just try and do some filler until then. There you go.
Apologies, we're having right. Internet issues here.
Yeah, that's all right. It happens, and I think people generally understand when they're watching YouTube and whatever that these things happen. But no, I was just saying that the actor James Parnell is in it. Sorry, Charles Parnell. Sorry, as the survivor captain. Charles was in recently in Top Gun Maverick. Don't know whether you've seen that film yet, but
I have. Yeah, I didn't recognize him.
Yeah, he was the captain next to Skinny Pete on that ship. So which had a real, I don't know, it had a real sort of Waterworld / Mad Max vibe to it. Did you feel that? It was kind of
a little bit, yeah. It was more like like time bandits even.
Interesting.
Pirates.
Fair enough. Yeah, a few more. I mean, just to you picked up on most of them, to be honest. But we talked about Captain Palion, played by Xander Berkeley there, and obviously we get a mention of Grand Admiral Thrawn again in that Imperial Shadow Council holographic meeting. I do love, that's a very Star Wars thing, and I love it when there's some sort of continuity with that, in the way that people in the Star Wars universe, in the Star Wars galaxy, communicate via hologram. I never liked it when they tried to introduce that into early Star Trek, i.e. Star Trek Discovery, as a thing of communication, because it was like, no, Star Trek is always communication on the view screen, and then much later on holographic doctors and whatever, but not for communicating. So they've kind of retconned and fixed that now, which is good. One of the other characters there was Commandant Hux, and Commandant Hux is actually, I think, the father of General Hux from the sequel trilogy. And again, nepotism at its very best here, but it kind of makes sense. Domhnall Gleeson plays General Hux in the sequel trilogy, and the actor playing Commandant Hux is Brian Gleeson, who is the real life brother of Domhnall Gleeson. And
oh wow,
obviously they're both the sons of Brendan Gleeson. So again, that kind of makes sense. A bit like you're saying about the casting and stuff, and Bryce Dallas Howard having a husband in a episode, and of course in the new casting news, Hera, who's a character from Star Wars Rebels, is going to be played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's obviously with Ewan McGregor. So it's all connected. And it's funny because with the announcements, it seems that they've kind of gone half and half. Like half the announcements are being played by the actors that voice them, and the other half aren't. And as Dave Filoni said, we're just trying to cast the right people for the roles, because obviously back when they were doing the animated shows originally, people were cast for their voice talents, but not necessarily to look like the imagined character, the animated character. So it works for some characters and not for others, but which kind of makes sense. We've talked about the Praetorian Guards there, which, as you said, very cool. They were, as I said, seen in The Last Jedi as well, protecting Snoke in that film. So I do think they're trying to connect everything together. There's also some mention in that council of Project Necromancer. Obviously, that word meaning bring back the dead. And he also passed some tanks of what looked like clones. And maybe, this is sort of going to answer that question from the sequel trilogy about somehow Palpatine returned. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then obviously, great, as you said, to see Giancarlo Esposito back in Star Wars as Moff Gideon. I'm really glad he's back. What a badass costume! I couldn't help but think it's kind of a nice mixture of Mandalorian, Darth Vader, and Darth Maul, all kind of rolled into one. With the whole black and red, and it had the horns on the helmet and stuff, didn't it? And
yes, it did.
And
just to be devilishly and even more evil and sinister for one of our favorite villains now.
Exactly. And the troops he had have a little bit of a resemblance to where they're sort of going with the First Order stormtroopers, I think. Yeah. I don't know whether I'm just trying to read into that or whether there is a bit of
that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
I'm a bit of a nerd for continuity stuff, so wherever they can do something to make that work, it always pleases me if they can do it. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe this missing link will make the sequel trilogy better. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's that it is possible to sort of retroactively fix things. We see them do it in Star Trek. We see them do it in Star Wars. I mean, many people have said that the Clone Wars animated series made the actual prequel trilogy better. I think the direction they're going in, particularly with the announcements, whether you agree with this or not, I think they are going into a direction where they are going to try and join up to the sequel trilogy in some way.
They've got a few years to go yet.
They have, which is a good thing. Plenty of stories to be told and things to happen. So
that's a good point, actually, because there's one story that we were all dying to see in the second movie, which we didn't get to, and it was only flashbacks in the first there, was with Luke training up Ben. That's it. Ben Skywalker. So that's him. And then him turning to the dark side, and then his buddies as well. Now we've had that already with the dark side, so we didn't need a repeat, but there was still some aspects there that were given to us and really teased us into thinking, we're going to see this, we're going to see the turning, we're going to see Luke fail, and we never got it. So maybe they'll get to that point in the future, but for now, of course, there's plenty of story, especially with the Ahsoka story still to come.
Yes. I like and that's what I always try, and it's one of the ethoses of this channel and show, is we're always trying to approach this stuff from a positive appreciation side of things rather than a sort of negative vitriol of
we
stuff.
didn't like the chapter 22 so much, but 23 pulled it back.
I mean, there's definitely, when we get into nitpicks and stuff, there's definitely things to criticize, but the fact that we're trying to sort of remain optimistic about the bits that we're not so keen on working. But that brings us really nicely into our prediction. So is it going to be Never Tell Me the Odds, or I've got a bad feeling about this?
Never tell me the bad feelings about this.
There you go. That's what it should be. Actually, that should be the name of this this stream probably. But no. I mean, without blowing our own trumpets, we have been right about some things. We've been completely way off about some things as well. But let's look at the positives. So, I've been going on about Grand Admiral Thrawn for a while, haven't I? To the point that's actually got you to start reading the Timothy Zahn trilogy. And I know in the trailer for Ahsoka, we see Thrawn, we see the back of him, so we know he's going to be the big bad in that. And it has been confirmed that he's going to be played by Lars Mikkelsen, that we talked about on previous episodes, as to whether he had voiced him for Rebels, whether he was going to come back to actually play him, and that's been confirmed. I'm putting it out there a little bit. I'm still wondering whether we will actually see him next week in the finale of this, even though we know he's going to be in Ahsoka, but they've kind of let that one, they kind of revealed that. So I don't know. Is that crazy? Do you think we're going to see this?
I think it'll be, and I know this entire series, we've had a bit of inconsistency and a bit of deflection, right? So we've been diverged a bit, but if anything, it could be a post-credit scene or something where Moff Gideon does lose, if we're going to predict. The stakes have been risen so high now, they're up there, that it has to be Bo-Katan, maybe with Grogu as well going in and rescuing Din. So it's going to be a rescue operation type genre, because we've had a few genres in this particular series, haven't we?
Yes.
So we may have a rescue operation one, and Bo-Katan with the dark saber does something, I don't know, beheads Moff Gideon or pierce something good. Although it won't be, because this is more of a kids show, or maybe even a 12+ show. It won't be a Breaking Bad end to Gus Fring, where he's blown up and half his face is kind of blown off, right?
Spoilers for Breaking. We didn't say spoilers for Breaking Bad, did we? But there you go.
It's 10 years now. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, where have you been?
We've had a whole series of Better Call Saul in there since, haven't we? So yes.
Anyway, I waffled a bit there. I even digressed. But I think it'll be too much if you throw him in now, because at the moment we've got Moff Gideon, who is in control, who's there, and then it is versus the Mandalorians, and the Mandalorians want to take Mandalore. If you diverge from that, where's the season finale gone, right? You've built all these episodes up, and
here's the question though: do you think we're going to get a finale or a cliffhanger?
Well, I did say 2 chapters ago that the way they were building it could be a 2-series story, therefore it being what you just said, the cliffhanger. So this would be. I don't have a gut feeling, a bad feeling, or never tell me the odds on this one, but I would now prefer it to be an ending over a cliffhanger.
Okay. Well, should we get
as ever with me? It's a personal preference over where it's going, because to be fair to them, as up and down as some of these episodes have been, they've been nothing but surprises.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot. I'm not just talking about the cameos and the like. There's been a lot of surprises here. Some people would have shouted out, "Yeah, we know that Moff Gideon is still alive." Fine, but where we've been incorrect in our predictions. We've been wildly incorrect, and that's not a bad position to be in either. I'd rather be wrong and be entertained and be surprised in the storytelling.
Indeed. Well, I think this is a good point to get into our thoughts and points of view on this. So let's look at this from a certain point of view. All right, so this is where we really sort of get into now our thoughts and good and bad on this. And well, Graham, would you like? I don't know. Do you want to do it per episode or overall?
Yeah, they kind of bleed really. But yeah, let's get into chapter 22 quickly, and then we can leap out of it as quickly as well, and then relax more and geek out over chapter 23. That's how I'd like to play it.
Okay, well, you've given a lot away there. I mean, we haven't talked about this, and as I said at the beginning, had we been doing separate episodes, so had we recorded this last week before seeing chapter 23, the two chapters, to give my hand straight away, the two chapters for me kind of that Star Wars, I don't think Star Wars has ever really been consistent. It's been one of those franchises that I've been a fan of my entire life, but there's been inconsistencies in that franchise. And I would say that the two chapters represent for me both the good and the bad of Star Wars. Let's just put it that way. So but yes, we can dig into that.
No, I don't want to be too negative, but it was chapter 22. It was another digression, and whilst as with the Convert, the previous chapter, where there was quality storytelling, it didn't fit the Mandalorian, and I've heard that from others now. What I've taken to doing in this series is actually watching these episodes with wife and daughter as well, where I hear their opinions afterwards. And I wasn't alone with chapter 22 saying, yeah, it was mixed up, and where we really wanted to see the Mandalorian story, but we got another separate story, and them separate would have worked. So that kind of took us out of it. So we came out of the episode disappointed, which we didn't really. It shouldn't have been that way, because what we were served up with was actually brilliant. It progressed the Mandalorian story because of what happened with the Darksaber and Bo-Katan winning, and us should have been excited, but because we felt having to be dragged through a police procedural, and don't get me wrong, I'm a massive detective novels fan, especially Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett, right? Big fan there. Those elements there that I could pick out and enjoy. It just didn't fit in the Mandalorian universe.
Yeah. No, I very much agree with that. I mean, what can I say? It was, this show has been, or this season particularly, has been very inconsistent, and I think that is partly that comes with the territory when you're doing serialized storytelling, as opposed to a episodic, adventure of the week type thing where some will be better than others, always the case there, because this is supposed to be sort of somewhat joined up, as Star Wars has always been. It's always been serialized, based on the Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon serials and stuff. But the films, they always kind of had a self-contained element with threads that led into the next one, into the conclusion, and all of this sort of thing. And this, I had a lot of problems with chapter 22 tonally, For me, I know we've had a lot of cameos in Star Wars over the years, but usually they are somewhat disguised, somewhat, they might be playing an alien creature or voicing a droid or something like that. And I did find the sort of Jack Black and Lizzo cameos in this to be, and even the Christopher Lloyd one, to be honest, to be a tad distracting. Suddenly I was pulled out of being a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and I was very much reminded, oh yeah, there's there's someone I'm really familiar with, and that's not their fault at all. But I was just somewhat surprised at some of the casting choices, and tonally, I'll be honest, I really did not like much of that stuff. I found it to be too silly for me, and it seemed to be a plot device to have a babysitter for Grogu. Basically, there was we want Bo and Din to go on a police procedure. We want them to be Mulder and Scully or Grissom or whatever police procedure you want to use. Yeah, we want them to go off and be detectives, but they can't bring a baby with them, so we need a babysitter. And it just kind of seemed a little bit convenient for the story there. And I was like, what are we some of it was well made and stuff, but I was just like,
it was
a bit silly.
But again, what pulls me out, and it happened a little bit with chapter 23 as well, is when Star Wars becomes too like Earth now or Earth's history. Star Trek can get away with it because it is of that. It's always been of this particular galaxy because there is an Earth, right?
Yes.
The Sector 001 with Star Trek, but with Star Wars, it is a galaxy far, far away. It's a long time ago.
Exactly.
So why are we finding police procedurals? Why are we finding so much of what is now in Earth, or as will be people predicting what the future will be for technology and culture, being there in Star Wars? That was what throws me. We never got it in growing up with the original trilogy first. It was all this fantastical science fantasy is what we've always described it as, isn't it? We've got science fiction with Star Trek and we've got science fantasy. Whereas now we've actually got science fiction coming into it, and it pulls me out completely. And I'm similar to you. It just dampens the real excitement and the wonder of Star Wars.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. Whereas Star Trek is a possible future of humanity, in our galaxy. Star Wars is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and a space fantasy. And I take it that meant, I'm glad you said it, because I take it that meant you didn't like the "let's get the bantha out of the room" line. Yeah,
it's pithy, but it just doesn't belong here.
Yeah. The other thing I had a big problem with in this episode is we got, obviously they touched on it a little bit in the film Solo, A Star Wars Story, but we got into sort of like the droids culture here in this one. And this thing about the droids drinking and having their motivations or whatever changed by what's in the fluid that they drink.
Nepenthe.
Nepenthe. Which, by the way, there was a Star Trek episode called that last season. But there you go. No, Nepenthe. I had a I don't know. I didn't like that. That's not how droids have been represented so far in Star Wars. With C-3PO and R2-D2 and things. It's not been seen that way in the prequels or the original trilogy or even the sequel trilogy. You know, we've not had that, and I'm not sure. Kind of fleshing that out in this, I'm not sure I liked that at all. I thought that felt kind of wrong, and I don't know. I didn't particularly like that. I don't know how you felt about that part.
No, well, that one setup was just changing Din Djarin, really, because he's always had a problem with droids.
Yeah.
And this one's showing that you don't have to be. So it's bringing more modern culture on Earth as is going now, with non-discrimination and being open to all. They're bringing that into Star Wars, which isn't necessarily a bad thing at all. And it's a younger generation of viewers who are picking up on this, who will identify more with this, who will resonate with them, and that's all fine and well. But it did seem a bit heavy-handed the way it was done too. And so
but nano droids and maintenance fluid and all of that doesn't seem very Star Wars to me. I don't know.
But George Lucas himself, practically fucked up the Force, didn't he, with all the midi-chlorians in the prequel trilogy, right? And as well, what the F is? What are you doing? It's the Force. It's Buddhism, it's Taoism. The Force is something that is mystical, but it can be attained by anyone. And now you're actually having to have a blood type that gives you stronger Force powers. So he tried that before, and that went down like that.
To be fair, they've been trying to work that into the Mandalorian as well, because obviously you remember that one of the reasons that Moff Gideon in the previous seasons was after Grogu was because he had a high M count level, as they put it. But so but you're right. It's okay, I guess, but I don't know. I just didn't particularly like chapter 22, if I'm honest. It was like there are elements of it that was okay, but overall I kind of rolled my eyes and face palmed a few times and was just like, oh dear. And I was thinking about the what we were going to talk about in the cast, and then, as I said, things at home transpired that I couldn't do it anyway, and maybe just as well.
Maybe it'd be more of a let's see what rant is out there.
But as I said, I don't mean to be super negative, but
23 came along.
But then, I mean, 23 has kind of joined up a lot of dots, hasn't it? And worked nicely as a sort of penultimate episode, because it got everybody, well, it certainly got me excited again. I guess Star Wars is a lot of things to different people, and the kind of things we were covering in chapter 23, the spies, was all the sort of stuff I liked. And of course it's brought that side quest episode we had with other characters, it's sort of brought that more into play now, right?
Mm-hmm. A bit more into play, although I've got thoughts on that too.
Oh, well, please share them.
Fine. So I've shared previously, so a bit of a repeat here, but the convert chapter, which again had the book-ended Mandalorian story and then the long story of Elia Kane, eventually mind-flaying Dr. What's-His-Face, the clone doctor.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that, she was evil before. She's Moff Gideon's communication officer. We saw her in that at length, and then we saw her, I think it was the chapter before, where she was not helping I have to go back to my notes and remember his the character's name now. It was with Colonel Tuttle, that's it, and where she was not being helpful at all to Carson Taver, right? So so we saw all of that, which is fine, and there were more kind of cameos for her, right? So she had a bit, and now she is. We now see her in this episode at the beginning. She is Moff Gideon's communication. She's his spy too. Okay, so that's fine, but I still don't believe we needed a full episode to explain her and the New Republic's program to take old Imperial people and turn them. We're intelligent enough that you have these snippets of information that we can piece it together. So where she is now, we could have had that in one scene rather than an almost entire episode back there in the convert. So that's what, again, it was that episode where we were taking out of it. There was a digression, and what we, the first scene here where, she does see Moff Gideon, the reveal that he's still alive, is brilliantly done. But I did go back and think, why did you have to give us an entire episode of her when actually little snippets would have made us think more, or really get into the mystery of it. And it was just overkill a few episodes ago, which was such a shame. But again, it was nailed this time.
I also think, and again, it's just, I don't know any of this, it's just reading between the lines, but I think some of it, I think this season has had to have a little bit of rearranging because of Jon Favreau had planned out, his Mandoverse with Dave Filoni. They'd sort of planned out, and they were going to do like Rangers of the New Republic, which was a cancelled show because of Gina Carano getting fired and all of that sort of stuff. And I know that I think they were trying to work some elements of that into this before they get to Ahsoka. Also, again, if you believe the rumor mill, which I obviously take with a big grain of galaxy far away salt, but there's that whole thing, like the reason in the book of Boba Fett, the reason you had the sort of undoing of what the Mandalorian season 2 had set up, with Grogu going off with Luke Skywalker and them being separated and all this, was a mandate of Disney, of the studio, based around merchandising and stuff. But again, it might have been the creative process, and the film business is complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved, and sometimes it's not always easy to sort of fix these things on the fly, and I do feel that some of this season has been kind of compromises based on plans changing, and I think that's a fairly diplomatic way of putting it. But I know nothing. I would only love to be involved myself in these shows, and then be partly to blame. But from a fan point of view, and from somebody who understands filmmaking, I think the business is a crazy one, and there's a lot of moving parts here, and I think this is part of the problem with trying to put out weekly episodes. Weekly content is you almost get to the quantity over quality thing if you're not careful. And I'm just wondering whether that's why we had a few plot deviations this season, is to try and sort of bring some things in place that are going to pay off in Ahsoka and some of the other plans that they've got. But I don't know. I'm waffling a bit now. I'll shut up. Sorry.
No. But no. So there was that basically that made me think back to then. But then the rest of the episode, of course, was them go again. So they got on with it. There was a plan, and they executed it. But what they hadn't realised was that they were actually being pushed into a trap as well. And I thought, as if you've noticed with many of the other episodes to this series, and I'll go back to my notes and I'll pick out the names of them as well, right? So there was a double meaning. So I thought that the Mandalorians on the ship, they were spies too, because we'd seen Moff Gideon, and I thought they were going to be, they would somehow find them to get the new Mandalorians, the Night Owls and the Armorers, or the ones from the Creed. There, they would be the COVID. They would be trapped there, but they weren't. But with the other episodes, we have had more than one character or meaning to the title as well. So this one's the spies, and that was plural, but we did have, Elijah Kane, and then, as I call them, the Secret Seven Shadow Council. They were there as well. They were the spies there. We've had, right from the beginning, we had the Apostate, which, going right back to the first episode, where it wasn't actually Din Djarin, because he hadn't forsaken his creed or his religion. That was more Bo-Katan. We had the convert then, which was Bo-Katan again, and we had Elijah Kane, both being converts in that episode. So we had the foundling, which was Grogu, and the son, the son, I can't remember his name now, him as well. And then it changed, of course, where we had the pirate and Guns for Hire being the first episode in the Mandalorian series in full, not to have the in the title, but that was just a little find there.
Oh yeah,
for the first one.
Yeah,
but with the other ones, there's been lots of double characters or double meanings, and I found the spies was another one. And again, I had thought, actually, is Skinny Pete going to betray the Mandalorians? No, he didn't in the end. It was all Moff Gideon, who had been plotting all of this, and obviously he's not in the novels. Well, I haven't read them all, but he's not in the verse. So basically, to do that, who are the spies? And of course, we're finding out that Moff Gideon has his own spies. So so that direction, that plotting, and the writing, I still am finding brilliant by Jon Favreau. Sometimes Dave Filoni as well. I think he's doing a good job there, just to keep us guessing.
Yes. And do you think? Sorry, I'm kind of jumping back to speculation a little bit here, but something that Moff Gideon did say when he was talking about the Beskar armor on the stormtroopers, which obviously answers that question about the Beskar in the shuttle and stuff. But he also says that part of the ingredient is him, right? So do you think that maybe the cloning, that he's trying to clone himself?
That's a total possibility, because there was a bit of Grogu that could have been, but in saying him, because that's a double meaning, isn't it? He could be figurative and literal, couldn't he? So
I
think it's a bit more sinister that it is literal. It is some of his blood that's in them. That would make more sense to how the real villains of Star Wars always have been. They've always been a bit sinister. They've always been, well, the Emperor himself, and when he was a senator too, was always looking to be looking to out evil anyone, and so everyone. Darth Vader was always trying to out evil everyone else too. So I'd like to think that. I think that's the more interesting take in it, rather than it just being figuratively.
Yeah. I mean, I must admit, and again, Star Wars has always had, comic relief characters and humor in Star Wars. That's very much part of Star Wars. So I know that. And I understand. I mean, it's cute and it's definitely for merchandising, I have no doubt. But I'm not really sure I like the IG-12 Grogu thing.
Well, here at Shea Williams, it was the biggest. They got the biggest laughs of the entire series. We loved it, and I went back to it earlier. Yes, we love it. I don't care if it's for merch. More of the same. Absolutely brilliant.
Because they're going to release that, obviously.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, it was I chuckled and went along with it, but I did sort of think this is a bit silly. In the episode.
Well, again, it's for kids, Star Wars, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
But we had that, but then I thought Moff Gideon and the Stormtroopers were super cool. So we got a bit of both in there. I was really sad about Paz Vizsla. He obviously got his moment of glory at the end because he really did put up a great fight, a really good fight. But and did you enjoy the sort of his version of Old Painless actually getting to the point where he'd used it so much that it sort of disintegrated itself? I was like, wow.
That was truly awesome. No, that whole sequence was thrilling, and yeah, it's always sad to see a hero die, but to have a hero's death, that's what the movies are about often, right?
Yeah.
So that was sad, but they were trapped, and there was no way out. Din had been captured. Where are they going to go now? I was screaming at the screen in my head for Bo-Katan to use the dark saber, which she eventually did. They drew that one out a bit, but no, Paz Vizsla just getting in there and blasting down some of those clone flying Mandalorian commando troopers was excellent. Again, that set up next chapter. It sets it up absolutely brilliantly because we don't even know what's going to happen to Din. But again, my hope is they will do more of a rescue, and it's going to be as adventurous because we've had some adventure-filled, superb Star Wars action in this series. With all of its consistencies, we've been treated to some kick-ass scenes. So I'd expect the same, if not more. Because look at the pirate. We didn't know where the pirate was going, and the last third was just electric. It was absolutely brilliant. So we know they're capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And I would like to see, just to go back to your point, I'd like to see Grogu 12 kicking ass and being given a couple of blasters and just blasting out and using the Force. And because he's been using the Force for his own stomach, or filling his own stomach, as well as some good things in this. So we know he's got the powers now. So him, even if he has to take the dark saber and fight Moff Gideon, as silly as that sounds, I'd enjoy that.
And do you feel, this season of The Mandalorian has been accessible to the casual viewer, or do you think it's more aimed at the more hardcore Star Wars fan?
Yeah, good question. I'd say more the latter. I wouldn't say for the hardcore fans because there's been other elements in it. I think the first series was definitely for all at a broader reach. This one's had a lot of tips and winks and Easter eggs and cameos, but also with its references, I think it could have lost a lot of people. You disliked the first episode because you jumped from Mando's end of Mando season 2 into season 3 and go, wait a minute, what's happening with? He's got a new ship. Grogu's with him, so that would have thrown. I know it did actually. I talked to a couple of other people, and that threw them, and I had to explain or tell them to go back to Book of Boba Fett. But I said I don't want to do that because it was rubbish. Their words, not mine. But yeah, so there was that. So if I'm thinking about it, really, yeah, I think there's been a fair bit of excitement, but it's inconsistency and its Star Wars references, I think, would have switched a few people off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, we've got the season finale to come next week. We'll see where that goes and how we feel at the end of it. But unless you've got anything else to add, Graham, I think we'll call it a day. Unless you've got any other valid points you want to raise.
Not at all. No, not at all.
Okay. Well, let's use the com link. All right. Well, thank you for bearing with us this long. If you want to get in touch with us, you can follow us on the social media at LSWOT Cast, as in Let's See What's Out There, or Home Media Minefield, which is this channel. As I said, please do check out some of the other work on here, including our sister show looking at the final season of Star Trek Picard. And again, we're up to the penultimate episode leading into the finale next week. So please check those out. If you want to see more creative work, I've got another channel called British Isles. That's EYLES, as in my last name, and some short films that I've made on there. So please check that out. And finally, a shout out to Neil Myers, who does the theme music for our show. Neil's work can be found at neilmyersmusic.com. And please check out the channel for more related Star Wars material, as well as things on other properties as well. But that just leaves me to say thank you, Graham, for joining me once again on this. And I look forward to discussing the finale with you next week. And thank you. We will see you next time on
Let's See What's Out There.
Bye for now.